So this is the MATLAB IDE. The parts that you really care about, or the most important things that make MATLAB really useful, are the workspace and the command window, and then something called editor I'll show you a little bit later. But the idea is workspace will hold all the values you just calculated, so you can see them really easily. The command window is where you can enter commands and do math and stuff, and that's how you interact with MATLAB. So I'll show you a little bit of something. So let's say we want to create a variable A and give it the value 5. Enter it there, and then it shows up in your workspace. So you don't even have to go through a debugger. Although MATLAB does have a debugger, you don't need to use it a lot of the time. It's built for analysis. And you can really do anything you want through this, or you can't do that. You can really do anything through the command window, and that's just how you enter data. Over here, like this area, this is your current directory. I just did something. This, in most cases that you'll be dealing with earlier on, is all the files that your directory can see right now, so everything you can pull from. So this involves non-MATLAB functions. Okay. So anything that you work on that you want to be able to call like other functions and want to be using in your current, whatever you're working on, they should probably be in your current folder. There's other ways you can wrap things, but that's pretty high level. So here, you've seen I've done some simple math. One important thing about MATLAB is that it makes by default all numerical values doubles, which is a double precision floating point. That's also kind of dangerous because you can add whatever you want and it'll not differentiate between them. But for most things they'll do, double or fine. You can also do things called strings, which are sequences of letters. Yes?
Does that mean that there's a way to worry about memory on this?
No, MATLAB is fine. If you're doing something crazy insane, which I have a couple times, you'll always be fine with it. It's a very rare case in which you'll actually crash MATLAB.
But it's been done.
I have done it several times. But that'll mostly be if you're dealing with tons of for loops and are building a huge data sets. I'm talking like thousands and thousands and thousands of elements in an array. You also do that with simulations sometimes too. But so yeah, all these things in the workspace. So I created a variable, give value 5. I can double click on it, and it'll show it to me as a matrix. If it's a structure like data type, you can double click on it, and I'll show you all the elements in the field. So the workspace will show you everything that MATLAB knows about that variable. And you can also call things that are stored in your workspace, like how I did b equals a plus 3. A was already a stored value in MATLAB in that workspace. So if it's in your workspace, you can pull information from it, you can use it. So by saying b equals a plus 3, it's the same thing as saying b equals 5 plus 3.
If you change the value of a, would the value of b change too?
Not automatically, no, because it's not a formula. It's, I would have to run through again b equals a plus 3, but let's change the value there. So now a equals 4. It automatically changes the value in the workspace. And if you wanted that b thing again, probably a quick way to do it is to use your arrow keys while you're in the command window and go up, and select that again. You might see on some of your things a command history, and that's just a quick way of showing everything that you've done recently. Like if I do this, this shows my command history. Oh, that's nice. So yeah, how you actually write code though is you use the editor. So most of you don't have editor open, so up here, hit new script. And that is awkward.
Wait,
There's a button called new script up here, except for on home. On the home tab, up at top, there's a new script. And this is where you can write things. Oh, always start scripts with or close all, clear all, CLC, always. Always, always. So what that means is close all open figure windows, which we'll cover later in a different lecture. Clear all is clear all values in your workspace, so you have a clean workspace starting out. So you're not pulling values from some old thing you were doing, so it doesn't screw with you. And then CLC is clear the command line, or command line clear. I'll show you how to do something that's pretty useful for prototyping. If you do a double % sign, it creates something called a cell, which is a section of code that if you do a control enter, it'll just run that section. And by running those three commands, you can see my workspace doesn't have anything in it anymore. The command window is cleared, and it didn't have any open figure windows, so you didn't get to see those posts. But always start with those.
so the double %, what is the double %?
It creates a cell. So if I hadn't done that, I would have had to actually run the entire script. And that has some implications, like I'd have to actually save the document because it auto-saves when you run, and I wasn't quite ready to do that yet. Cells lets you prototype like sections of your code.
You
So if I
amend the
did-
cell with another double %.
Yeah, so if you do another double %, it creates that break, and now you've got another cell. So I'll show you something. So let's say we want to define a is equal to 5. So we do that. And then e equals a plus 3. This is primarily how you will interact with MATLAB. So let's run that. You can see the values pop up in my workspace. It's exactly, running from a script is exactly the same as taking those lines of code in your script and just copying them and pasting them into the command window. That's essentially what happens when you run code. As you'll notice, I have some orange squigglies. That's because it's not liking that I didn't suppress these. When you don't suppress, what happens gets printed out into the command window because it is basically copying and pasting what you have in your script or copying what you have in your script and pasting it into the command window and hitting enter for each line.
What do you mean by suppress?
Okay, so when we suppress, we do a semicolon at the end, and then when I run this again, it doesn't actually spit it out in the command window. So if you're doing large scripts, people will get really, really annoyed with you if you don't suppress, because then you'll just have all the stuff that you did and all the stuff MATLAB calculated just in the command window, which is usually not necessary. Pretty much never necessary. So
When I do the double %, it doesn't execute.
you have to do a double % and then a space, or a double % and then go to the next line. And it has to be no spaces in between the double %.
Yeah.
Isn't this not working?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check.
I'll do it.
So
What's supposed to happen when we do the double %?
it's supposed to create a cell. So let's make another one. So let's see. So let's say we want A to equal 3 this time and B to equal, right? Oops. Nope. Okay. Let's create 2 new variables, C and D. So to show you how cells work, if I run this again, you didn't see any change because the values just replaced with what they were previously. But if I run this bottom cell independently, it clears those previous values and leaves out those values. So it didn't calculate everything that I have in my script, just what was in the cell.
If you didn't have to clear all and close all, would it still just do this?
Yeah. So that's how you comment. So that's how you tell two more lines to go. Is you can do, if you want to comment out an entire line quickly or a set of lines, you can do a Control R. But yeah, so if we run the first one again, we get A and B. And if we run the second
run the first one, can we just press enter after the end or
no, it's Control Enter.
controller?
And then, so now we have A and B. And then let's run just the second one. And now we have C. So it didn't run the first one, so it didn't do that close all clear all CLC. And then I can uncomment that and then so yeah, just to prove it, C. It doesn't know what A is because but C equals 1. So most of the time you'll be using MATLAB essentially as a really big calculator, a really, really fancy calculator. And this is how you interact with it. So let's try running this as an actual script. So go over to your editor tab, which will be at your top. And then to run scripts, you hit the run button. And if you haven't saved it before, then it'll ask you to create a file name. They can't ever start with numbers, so just make it a name. And then if you need to have some kind of enumeration, do it at the end. So I'm going to call this test script. And then it'll run it. And when you run, it ignores all cells.
Does empty something solve so you don't need internet allows you to
Yeah, no, you don't need internet for any of this. There's very little where you actually need internet for that. And I've only done it a couple times, and that was totally unnecessary, mostly for my own entertainment. So at this point, do you have any questions? And you still don't have cell phone, right?
No, I wasn't getting control.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, it'd be, I'm just going to type out what that command is. Oh, by the way, this is a string. So this is an entirely different data type that has to do with characters. There's not a lot that you're going to be doing to start out with that has to do with strings, but they're there. So they show up as a different type of thing than doubles do. And you denote a string by apostrophes. So yeah, if I double click on that, it'll say it's a 1 by 10 character of that value. If I click on D, it's this. And you can pass these around exactly the same way you can pass around doubles. So I can ask it what E is, and it'll tell me that.
So all this is to, what exactly is the simulation in the future?
This is just to get you guys introduced to how to interface with MATLAB. So how you can use MATLAB.
Okay, so MATLAB is used for simulations in the
No, MATLAB is used, well, yes, but MATLAB is used for pretty much any kind of analysis you want to do. I can do large sets of numbers, so let's see. Let's go to my Dropbox. And 304. And this one. Oh yeah, this one. So I have this script that does a bunch of things. So what I did in this script was this is from a lab I took at Aero 304, which is experimental aerothermodynamics. And so we had collected a lot of lab data and we had them in these files over here, these .lvm, and I wanted to pull the information from them and format it. So I did some fancy things that I can teach you at some point. And then I created variables for them and gave them values that were based off of what was in the text. But yeah, so I can run this. And it gives me an error because I did something stupid. I can just click on that. Oh, hey, that was really dumb. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure you have apostrophes if you're actually referring to strings. It also tries to read it as a variable. So be very careful about that. If it doesn't find something by the name that you call it, then it'll just error. So here I wanted to do a large amount of data analysis. I think this might have just been my test for that. So now I have all that info. So these are arrays of like 370 elements having to do with one data type. That's generally the kind of thing you like using MATLAB for, because it's really annoying to do that on a calculator. So here I did the same thing, but then I actually did some math with it and did some tables. So, oh shit. Oops. Yeah. So I took that data and actually made some graphs out of it. And some nice formatted graphs of Greek letters. And so yeah, that's what you use MATLAB for. So what I just showed you guys, before I showed you the fancy stuff I did 2 years after I started using MATLAB, that's basically how you use MATLAB. So I recommend playing around with that for now. And that's what I've got to help you guys. Got any questions at this point? Because I'm definitely someone who knows how to answer pretty much any question.
How long did it take to learn everything, like, besides 2 years, like, how much time did you spend in MATLAB?
See, I did MATLAB a lot for fun, so pretty much took me a quarter to become really, really good at it. I started in 2015 was the first time I did MATLAB. And we did a little more than what I just showed you guys. We started actually doing some it was basically just basic math and plotting, which I'll cover more of that next time. To do stuff like this, you don't learn it in a lot of classes, but it's extremely useful to actually know. You can do things like a dot, by the way, which is a control for view. So you can make any of these things bigger and easier to read. But yeah, you have a lot of Cody-like things that can help you, like for loops and while loops. But it didn't take me too long to get a hang of it. If you started with another coding language, it's generally the most problems, or those people generally have the most problems out of most people who start with MATLAB. Just because they're used to being more explicit in saying, hey, I want this to be a double, or I'm creating variable, it's type double, and it has this value. MATLAB, you just say, I want this variable, and then I want to have this value, and it just does it.
You have object-oriented structures and things like that.
You can. I do have some object-oriented MATLAB. That's kind of higher level, but you can do stuff like that in MATLAB too. Oh, by the way, function browser is your friend. So that little FX or Shift F1 shows you all of the functions that are in MATLAB. So any of these things, like graphics, and it has help information. This has some stuff in it. So if you ever wondered, hey, it'd be nice if this was a MATLAB, this is already in MATLAB, you can just search a keyword, and I'll search all the documentation for all the functions in MATLAB. So let's do something with the matrix. And everything that has a matrix in its documentation comes up here. So you can do really refined searches. And MATLAB is extremely powerful, so you might want to just look through those sometimes, because it's kind of interesting. Oh, I actually had it spit out a bunch of stuff to the command window too. Cool. Someone else has something? Or, oh yeah, sorry, I totally forgot about the object-oriented thing. So here I just created a rectangle, and this is fairly high level. It's a useful skill to know, but not really necessary for using MATLAB. But in object-oriented programming, you have functionality packed in with structure. So you have this thing, it's a box. You define what that box is, and you can also define what that box can do. And it has its own functions built into it. So you can say, hey, I want this box to do such and such a thing, and it'll do it. And you can instantiate, you can create as many of those boxes as you want with the same properties. And so here I have properties that I can set, like length, width, and height. And then these are set based off of those. And it's got a what's called a constructor, which is just when you instantiate an object, it will run this automatically.
The constructor is C.
Yeah. We'll get to functions next time, unless you guys want to cover a little bit of that today. But how I actually run this is and it automatically set those other properties. And then I now have a thing in here. So yeah, that was a structure. I'm actually going to run this again, so all you see is the answer thing. When you don't say something equals something, it'll just automatically say answer equals, and that's just whatever was the last thing you get. So that's really easily overridden. So if I just say 5, now answer's a double and it's a 5, it equals 5. So be careful about that. So now we have what's called a structure. I can double click on it in the workspace and it shows me what's in the structure, which is a bunch of doubles. Plot handles is the one I'm looking for. So, and in this way, if you're familiar with other coding languages, it's very similar. Oh, cool. Those numbers have to do with the plot itself, so I think if I do plots. Let's see. Should also have some plot stuff. Here's a better one. So this is actually narrow and it creates something called an atmospheric box. This is atmospheric box. I'm not expecting you to follow along with this. I'm really hoping this is about here. Wow, okay. I must have disabled my plotting for this. This used to plot a really nice 3D block, or 3D blocks with some vectors in it, but it's been a while since I played with this. But you can do some way cooler things like interface with the this program called Xfoil that is run out of the command prompt that does some aerodynamics analysis on airfoils. And what one of my friends did was he created this function that he used in this class or object that he created for a senior design. He used this to create the airfoil and then interact with Xfoil, the other program. There's a lot of fancy things you can do, and if you want to learn more of that, come talk to me because I can definitely help you. Because I like doing things like that. And, oh yeah, so this entire folder with everything in it is just stuff I did for fun. So in C207, which is Mechanics of Materials, I realized a lot of it was really structured and very repetitive. Or very systematic, I should say. So I figured why not code it. So these will. So is this something? Oh. Let's see, how do we make this interface work? So it was. Let's do a simple Morse circle. So I was able to do that essentially what was a few weeks after I first used MATLAB, like a couple months. So the more you practice with it, the better you get, and you get good really fast. Because I had only taken one MATLAB class, I think, by this point, and it's fairly introductory, so I would highly recommend just playing around with things, thinking it'd be really cool if I could do this, and then just trying to do it. There's a lot of help on MathWorks. Pretty much anything that you're thinking about, you can do MATLAB, and then just use Google. And then MathWorks has a lot of documentation on things. Between that and, oh, oops. Cool. And then help. Plot. This shows you how to use all the inputs and what outputs you should be expecting for things. You can also go to the actual code itself, although MathWorks like this one sometimes decides to hide what they do because that's how they make money. So at this point you should be able to either do a lot of things or figure out how to do a lot of things. So I don't really have much right now other than just answering questions. So if you guys want to try doing some simple math stuff, then I can come around and help as you hit issues or start realizing that I didn't cover something. And I'm kind of new to the ribbon here because I started with 2012 in MATLAB and this came in 2013, so I've only been using this version for about 3-4 months. But MATLAB's pretty easy to use. It's set up that way, and I don't know how I just made that disappear. Oh, okay. Apparently this you can hide the ribbon. Zoom out. I don't know why you do that, but so just keep that in mind. So yeah, what do you start every script with? Yes. And what do they do? The first one's hard because I didn't show you what it does. What does clear all do?
There's the workspace.
Correct. And what does CLC do?
There's the
Actually, I do have some figures open right now. So if I structure things, I can. So I have 4 figures open right now. And it goes all. It's what you call the housekeeping section of your code. So just making sure that you aren't pulling stuff from old stuff you own.
Does it automatically save? Does everything save? Or
If you do a run from your editor, it automatically saves everything.
so if you were to close it without doing that,
It wouldn't save what I just did. Like here, actually this one I wouldn't save because that was important. But here, if I just close this one, it'll ask me if I want to save changes. But you can do Control-S save. It interacts a lot like everything else on your computer, so it's nice. Don't be scared by this. Most people still don't know how to do this. I just sort of figured it out.
it's an import function.
Yeah, so here I created what's called a cell. So we're going to be learning about different types of what are called containers, which is how you store information. Like it's the difference between just having a scalar value and a vector. I'll show you some right now. So you have A, and that equals 5. What if you want a vector of 3 elements? Or you want to pass around 3 elements that have to do with each other that are the same data type? Well, you
Wait, a
do
vector or an array?
vectors and array are interchangeable in MATLAB. The language is interchangeable. Like in C++, you use the curly brackets for an array. That means a cell in MATLAB, which is kind of exactly the same thing, except for you can put anything you want in it, any type of data.
You can cross data.
Yeah. You can do strings and doubles and structures in other cells.
There's no border.
There, yeah, so be careful with those. But if you just want to create a vector, just do that. And it'll whenever you say B, it'll pull up those two numbers. And then to pull elements out of it, you just specify with parentheses what place in the vector it is. You can also do matrices. So, now you create a matrix. This will be extremely useful for you as you work with MATLAB, because generally you are dealing with very, very large sets of data. So you want it to be able to auto-create things like this. So I could also do this, you see how I use spaces? You can also do commas. Do this. So a comma separation, so A equals 5, 4 is creating a matrix that is a spread out like this. If you do this with a semicolon, so this is what's called a row vector. This is a column vector. So it creates a vector like that.
Space spacing in the comments, can you have like 5, 4, and space 3?
Yeah, it doesn't care. MATLAB will just get rid of the spaces when it thinks about it. So as far as that goes, you really don't have to worry, because MATLAB takes care of a lot of that by itself. So you can make it as easy for you to read as you want, and you'll be better off for it. So code, however, makes you feel. As far as the style stuff, I will have some recommendations, but do whatever makes sense to you, and preferably what makes sense to other people. I've had to read a lot of that code. So if I want to pull at 5 from here, I would do this. So I pull the index 2, 2. So it's row, then row number, then column. So in this matrix, this is 1, 1. This is element 2, 1. This is element 3, 1. This is 2, 1, 2, 2, 3, or that's not right. Hold on. 2. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 2, 2, and 3, 2, and this is 1, 3, 2, 3.
Why do we need to pull out numbers?
Because a lot of the time you will want to address a single number at a time. Just because you're passing information around like that. And when you're dealing with actual vectors like we do in physics, Gravity works in one direction. So if you're doing anything with that, then so you have certain things you want to deal with sometimes. And also if you're doing for loops, which are a way of iterating through, you can look at one element at a time first.
So you start interacting with the first element of an array or a vector, you go to the first element and 0.
If you just, oh yeah, good catch. So MATLAB is 1-based, not 0-based. So in other coding languages, that 1 would be index 0, 0. MATLAB is made for people who are not computer science majors. So it's 1-based, so that's a 1. Be careful about that when you start doing other coding languages, because those are generally, most coding languages are 0-based.
If you're reading data into an array for a for loop, how would you denotate going to the next line? Like how would you use a for loop to, so for example, C, you go 1, 2, 3, semicolon, 4, 5, 6, semicolon. Is there a way to could you use a for loop to just insert a semicolon in a certain?
You wouldn't have to actually do the lines of code. You can just, you can either pre-allocate the size of the matrix if you know how big it's going to be. Are you talking about like creating a vector?
Creating a matrix, a multi-row matrix.
So you can do zeros or ones to pre-allocate basically a matrix. So this is just a way I've started doing it more recently. So I know it's a 3x3 matrix, so just cross it 3x3, and then I just say
And we just make a for loop.
D2 equals 5, and then I replace that middle element with 5.
That makes sense.
So you can also do some other things. As long as your matrix is complete, so as long as you don't have like a and that's it, MATLAB will let you create this as a goal. Just be careful, because if it, yeah, be careful with that. I would recommend doing the reallocation first, just so you already have something there, so there's less chance for error. We'll be having a workshop at some point, or I'm just going to have you guys start working on things, and then you're going to start hitting errors, and then we can show you how to use the debugger, because it's way easier than me just trying to create errors and do that, because I'm not really that creative as far as creating errors. I've gotten some really fantastic errors before, though. I'm telling you, some of them are just, I wish I had taken screenshots. But I've got a bunch of different projects in here. Let's see if anyone. Oh, this one's cool. So this one I actually did for my controls teacher. It's basically a controls toolbox. And then that was fun. You can do graphical user interfaces. You can create them in MATLAB. So something I can teach people who are interested in learning that. And I do it the cheaty way. I don't do it the right way. But yeah. So this is under development to actually start our sim. So I select an airport, and this is not my latest version, so it's broken. But so each of those like shaded out things, once you select something, it will allow you to select the next thing, and then eventually you could launch model and be done with it. But I wrote that in MATLAB, and it didn't like that. So yeah, you get fun errors like this sometimes. And generally, it's really explicit with what your error is, and we'll tell you the line number, and then you can just click on it, and it'll take you there. Oh, that's cool. Sorry, I haven't looked at this in like 5 months. So as far as plotting, see what it does. So I can actually make a GIF of this too. The Earth is rotating at the correct rate, by the way. But I can. Oh, if you ever hit a problem where it seems like MATLAB keeps running, Control C again and again and again until it stops. You'll find out that that is true later on. So, oh, what are my options here? Let's see. Oh. I like writing help documentation. Sorry, I occasionally get kind of carried away. Stuff that I forgot I did and then found again. The full version of this though is here somewhere. Terrible background, can't read anything. There it is. So that, oh, yeah, I made GIFs. That was fun. I love doing that. Okay. Or not. Probably not in the right direction. So that's the modified version of that. MATLAB's really, really powerful. I'm also doing a lot of analysis at the same time. So just generally as a tool for doing any kind of analysis, MATLAB is extremely powerful. And if you can figure out how to do it, then you're definitely better off. And you can do almost anything you can do in any other programming language in MATLAB, most of the time easier. Some of the time more difficult because MATLAB takes a little bit of liberties with how it sets things up, but for most of the time, you can do really cool things like this very easily. This didn't take me that long. Although this was after about 1.5 years of my using MATLAB, but this is putting together a bunch of really simple concepts. It's just basic plotting and then playing with frames and passing in data and going through for loops. I've actually got to show you how often I use MATLAB in my classes. Pretty much all of these folders are filled with MATLAB code. To the point where I've had to make subfolders for each assignment. You figure out how to be incredibly organized and you have to use it that much. Created airfoil geometry stuff. wonder if this works. Oh, hey, that works. Okay. Cool. And that was for an aerodynamics class. Are you still recording?
Well, it's just about over.
Okay. Yeah, that's still aerodynamics. And then I've got orbits. Orbits, you do a lot of coding. So if you're space side, Dr. Aid wants to read your code. Remember that. She wants to read your code. Just don't tell her I told you that. But you can also do you can also publish stuff, so you can create PDFs, which is pretty neat. MATLAB makes that easy. So which one is that? That's 2. So I took my code and did publisher, and it auto created this PDF. With some prompting by me as to where section breaks are. And then these, I believe, hyperlink. And it just sort of figured out how to do that on its own. But I'm hoping you guys are getting an appreciation for the types of things you can do with MATLAB.
For the 4, are the arguments separated by commas or semicolons?
I can show you how to do it for this right now. So this is pretty. So because of habit. So 4. Let's say. Okay, I should explain what I just did. So this creates an array, and I'm saying I want an array of elements that starts at 1, and then by increments of 1 goes to 10. So if I was to run this,
Come up to 322.
it's a syntax.
So 122 will be 122 root 322.
So if I run this, then I would get an array that has numbers 1 through 10. That's another fast way to create things in fixed intervals. So if I wanted to display so the for loop syntax is the same as creating is a good way to think about it. So I created a index marker that will start at 1, and then it will add 1. It will add 1 every time it runs through the loop until it gets to 10, and then it'll stop. So I want to display k of k. So here, I'm just printing out that number one at a time. And k, its final value is 10, and it's not an array.